All right. Well, first, I just wanted to thank you all for joining us today. We have over 500 students from 13 schools across the state with us today, and we're so excited to share some resources and experiences with you that might help you as you start to think about your own future careers. My name is Anna, and I'm with VSAC's GEAR UP program. GEAR UP is a federally funded program that serves 37 schools throughout Vermont and over 250,000 participants across the United States. I know we have a number of GEAR UP schools with us today, as well as a number of VSAC Talent Search schools. Through both of these programs, a VSAC outreach counselor can help you with future planning, career exploration, employability skills, college and job training program applications, and much more. If you're interested in participating, you can talk to your school counselor for more information and to find out if you're eligible to apply. I have just a few housekeeping items to share, and then we will get started. So first, you may have noticed that unless you are a presenter, you're muted, but you can type any questions you have throughout the presentation in the chat. If you need technical support, you can type it in the chat or message me directly. And we are recording the workshop today, but only the people who are speaking will show up in the recording. So feel free to leave your videos on. I know our panelists will appreciate being able to talk to some smiling faces instead of just blank screens. And we will share the recording with you all and post it on our webpage following today's event. So with that, I am going to hand it back to Kathy, our moderator from Careers CLiC, and she's going to get us started.
Okay, welcome everyone. I see there's still some classes joining. If your class is just joining, go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. Welcome everybody. We are so excited to have Vermont Career Connect happening today and having over 500 students here. This is so exciting. So middle school students, we have a really exciting panel for you today. But before we get started, I just want to go over a few things. We're going to be talking to our panelists about their career paths, what they have done over their careers so far, and what they're doing today. So before we hear from them, I wanted to share something with you. Now, I don't know in your school if you've done any kind of career exploration or talked with anybody about your interests and what careers you might be interested in. It could be in school or out of school, but there are some really neat resources in Vermont. And today's panel is organized around a resource that I'm going to share here. I don't know if everybody will be able to see this in a classroom. Don't worry if you can't. But right now I am sharing. And Adriana, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see the McClure brochure on screen? Because I can see you. Okay, great. So this is Vermont's high pay, high demand jobs. This is a resource called Pathways to Promising Careers that every 2 years, the McClure Foundation partners with the Vermont Department of Labor to put together. It's a resource meant for you. It's for middle school students, high school students, adults could use it too, college students could use it. But we actually share this with middle school students and high school students around the state. Thousands of copies of these go out to schools. You may have seen it before, or this may be your first time seeing it, but I'm just going to introduce you to a little bit of information that's in here. And Lauren will share a link to this guide that I'm projecting here in the chat. And that way teachers have that link handy. Anna also emailed it to all of you, so you have it there. And you could share it with students. You can also get physical copies of this from the McClure Foundation if you wanted to share it with students. So I'm just going to take you into the brochure and show you what's inside here before we get started with our panel. There we go. So this is the inside of the resource. I'm going to zoom here a little bit for those of you who can actually see this on your screens. If you can't, don't worry. But what is inside this brochure is about 60 jobs and occupations in Vermont out of 500 occupations that exist in Vermont that pay at least $22 an hour and have at least 220 openings in the state. So these are the highest paying, highest demand jobs in Vermont. And what you'll see here are different colors. These are categories that they're grouping different occupations into. It's using something called Holland codes. I don't know if you've heard of that yet in middle school, but you could look that up. It's a way to group jobs. There's lots of ways to group jobs. So what you'll see here is something that I consider a little bit like a game of would you rather. So for students in your classrooms, I can see lots of you. Raise your hand if you've ever played Would You Rather. Have you ever played the game Would You Rather? Like, it can be pretty silly, pretty fun. One that we use a lot with students is, would you rather mow the lawn with your teeth, or would you rather drink out of a puddle in a parking lot? You have to pick one. So it's a game of would you rather. But sometimes there are real life would you rathers. So these categories are examples of that. So in this orange section of this brochure, it's kind of like, do you like to observe, learn, analyze, and solve problems? Would you rather do jobs like that? Or would you like to work with people and use your creativity to guide or persuade? So it's a little bit of a would you rather. And I'm going to go to the second side of this brochure, which has this dark green color. Would you like working with your hands or with machines to make, fix, or build things? Or would you rather do things that are organized and detailed oriented? And do you like to work with lots of information? So when you're thinking about what you like to do, those are things that you could be good at, things you're interested in, ways you like to spend your time, and you can relate those things to different jobs and occupations that are available. I'll just show you a couple more things about this resource before we get started. But what you'll see in the first column are the lists of occupational titles. So right here, for example, we have police officers, and they'll tell you how many projected openings there are right here in Vermont, 890, and the minimum education needed to enter, high school plus training, and what the median wage is. That's the middle wage. Half of the wages are less than this, and half of the wages are more than this. So it's about $25 an hour or $52,000 a year. So that's called labor market information. What the occupation titles are, how many openings there are, what education and training is needed, and how much these jobs pay. So this is a resource for you as students to know what the high pay, high demand occupations are in Vermont. And today you get to meet people who are actually working in each of these color categories. So each of these categories, we have someone you can meet today. Now, if you may know what some of your interests are and what occupations you might be interested in, or you may not know at all. You might not have thought of it, or you've thought about it and you're just not sure. That is totally fine. You're in middle school. You have a lot of time to decide. But middle school is a really good time to start exploring and asking questions and listening to people about what they do and why they do it. So it doesn't matter where you're at. If you know exactly what you want to do, great. If you don't have any idea what you want to do, that is fine too. You can be wide open. So today, when you are listening to the panelists talk about their career paths and the jobs that they're doing right now, just kind of listen to different things that you might be able to relate to. And at the very end, we're going to ask you some questions. So we'll start by asking the panelists questions so they can share information with you. But then we're going to ask you some questions about what you thought, and your teachers can help communicate that with us in the chat. So just a reminder, I know Anna had already said this, but if any questions come up from teachers or students during the panel, teachers, you are welcome to ask those questions in the chat. You can direct it at a panelist if you want by using their name. You'll meet them in a moment. And panelists, if you feel comfortable answering in the chat, if a question is directed to you, you can, but don't feel pressured. I know that's hard because you're listening and talking, but go ahead and type a quick response if you're comfortable with that. If not, we'll have some time at the end of the panel for Q&A. We'll do some questions and answers with the panel. And any questions we can't get to today because we have a limited amount of time, we are going to copy the chat, go through all the questions that might be in there, and we can find those answers and follow up with you through VSAC staff. So we'll be able to do that as well. So don't worry. All right, so we are going to get started. I would love to start by asking each of the panelists to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about your career path, starting back as far back as you want to go, to your first jobs or your aspirations, and to where you are today. But remember, don't tell us too much in your introduction, just kind of a teaser, because we'll ask you more questions after. But give us and all of the students and teachers an idea of your career path, the journey that got you to where you are today. So we will start with Django. If you are ready, unmute yourself and go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. All right. Thanks for having me. And I just want to say hello to all the Vermont schools, and a big hi to Twinfield Union School, where I went to school K through 12. So I currently work at dealer.com. I am a support analyst there, and I never thought, hi everyone from Twinfield again, I see in the chat. I started really wanting to be a rock star. I think that was my dream. I was really into music all through my time at Twinfield. I went to Johnson State College and was pursuing a music degree there, graduated and got a bachelor's. And then I did some traveling. I played in a few different bands. I was out in Oregon and California. I toured in a band around the country, and I decided one day that I wanted to make myself a website for my own solo music, and that kind of snowballed into other bands asking me to make websites for them. And then I ended up making a website for the town of Johnson, a laundromat, like a lot of local businesses. My father's bookshop, shout out to the Country Bookshop in Plainfield, Vermont. So then I ended up moving back to Vermont and doing the Burlington Code Academy, which was a summer boot camp, which was an intensive coding course for 3 months. And that got my foot in the door at dealer.com. I'll go more into details there, but that's a brief overview of my story. And again, happy to be here with you all.
Great, Django. Thank you so much. I don't know how many of you have ever wanted to be a rock star, and how many middle school students now you want to be a rock star, but can definitely relate to that. All right, thanks, Django. Sara, if you're ready to unmute yourself, please introduce yourself to the students.
Hi, I am Sara Vargo. I am a Gear Up outreach counselor currently, and this is the first time I've ever spoken in front of 500 people. So thank you all for having me. I'm excited to be here and also a little nervous. 500 people's a lot. So my career, I guess, started as a bus person at a restaurant when I was in high school. And I then became a waitress after I'm currently so I went to college. I really loved learning about different people across the world, really, and learning about cultures and the environment at the same time. And I really became very interested in environmental justice work. So after college, I did the right thing, and I went and taught skiing in California for a year, which was really fun, and I really enjoyed it. And one day on the chairlift, I decided that I wanted to become a therapist. So then I went back to school, and after working at a community mental health organization for a few years, went back to school, got my degree in clinical social work, and then was a therapist for a while. And when my life changed, I became a career and education worker with VSAC, which is what I do right now as a Gear Up outreach counselor. So also in between all of this, I really love design and creating things. So during my free time, I do small installation design, mostly word of mouth. And yeah, I guess that's a little bit about my my wavy career path, not very straight, but fun, and kind of continuously using the skills that I've learned in school.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah. I love hearing about all the different things you've done. Okay, Brian, you are up if you're ready to unmute and introduce yourself to everybody.
Hi, my name is Brian Steele. I'm a master electrician and a theater technician. My arc started off probably very young. We were building a house when I was a kid, so I got to hold a tape measure from my mom and pull wires from my stepfather, and that just slowly kept coming back over the arc of my career. Right in the middle school, I was kind of doing that stuff. Had random odd jobs in high school that weren't related, but taught me how to work with people and how to work, generally speaking. Moving forward, music, not unlike Django, kind of was a thing in my life. Father and mother, both musicians. So out of high school, did normal work and then found that music really pulled me. And so I started pursuing an education in that and playing a lot of music, a lot of different bands all over New England. But really wanted to dedicate my time and space and energy towards the study of jazz. So I went to Johnson State College. And what has that got to do with being an electrician, right? Turns out the theater at Johnson State College needs people to run it. And I already had a lot of construction skills and electrical skills. So I, within the first year, became assistant technical director there and started on the career of being a stage technician. While I was in college, I also apprenticed at IATSE Local 919, which is the stagehand union that services the Flynn Theater, Dartmouth College, and many other venues in the state of Vermont and New Hampshire. And that was fantastic. I was about 15 years of behind the scenes working in theater, and that was all I was going to do. I loved that work so much. But I also fell in love, got married, and had some kids. The unfortunate part about being a theater technician is the hours are really bizarre. You get up, you got to be there at 7 o'clock in the morning, work for 3-4 hours. Then you got to come back at 11 o'clock at night and pack up all the stuff you built that day. So that doesn't really work out well with kids. So I started, went back to the drawing board and said, what is it that I can do that keeps me local, keeps me a regular time? And went back to the electrician thing. So I don't know what year it was I started doing that, probably around 2006 when my kids were born, and studied, went to technical school, got my journeyman's license, and now I have my master's license, and started my own company, that kind of stuff. Now I do a lot of all of that. I currently run audio engineering for a small venue in the town next to mine in East Fairfield, the Meeting House. I'm oftentimes, when there's a very large concert, I get called by the stagehand union to come and work for them. I did the Willie Nelson show not too long ago, and I could go on and on about all the different shows I've done. And yeah, so there I am, an odd meandering path, but one that was directed by my personal desires and the experiences I had and the educations I got along the way.
Great. Thank you so much, Brian. All right, over to Katie. Please unmute your mic and introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Katie. It's really nice to meet everyone, and I love hearing from the other panelists too. It's so rare that we get to really pick people's brains about what their lives have looked like so far, and I tend to be kind of nosy, so I love hearing those stories. So I currently am a dental resident, and that means that I'm at the tail end of my training to be a dentist. So I just graduated from dental school in May, and now I'm spending a year at UVM getting advanced training in general dentistry. So what does my day-to-day look like? I look at a lot of mouths. So I do a lot of exams. I get to talk with people, get to figure out what's going on. And then sometimes I'll do some procedures like fillings, crowns, root canals, and extractions. And I work in right now, actually, I'm in Plainfield, so shout out to Twinfield and Django as well. I'm at the health center here, which I'm loving so far. And I didn't know that I wanted to be a dentist really until I was in college already. I had loved my science classes in high school, especially my 10th grade biology class. And I actually thought that I wanted to go into medical research. My cousin has cystic fibrosis, which is a genetic disease. And so I thought I wanted to study other genetic diseases and, spend all my time in a lab, do a lot of science, and then kind of realized, and once I was studying those things in college, that wasn't really what I wanted to be doing, which I'll probably touch on in a little bit too. But then ended up getting to do some shadowing. And that was really when I figured out that I wanted to go to dental school and be a dentist. And so now I'm kind of at the tail end of that journey and so far really loving it.
Great, thanks, Katie. Students, for all of you listening right now, I know I just heard a lot of, and even some of the panelists even said, a twisty path, a windy path, a wavy path. Those are all things I heard. Sometimes what you start out wanting to do, you might have some twists and turns along those career paths. And as adults, it's kind of easy for us to reflect back on that. But I remember when I was in middle school, I didn't really think about my future that way. I thought once I figured out what I wanted to be, I would probably pursue that and be that for the rest of my life. That's not always the case. It is sometimes, and sometimes it can be related. But I just heard a lot of great stories about paths that take twists and turns. So panelists, I would love to hear a little bit from, we're going to ask a variety of questions and we'll come back maybe to that path concept in a little bit, but I'd like to ask you about something a little bit different. I am wondering about the skills that you use in your current role, the current work that you're doing now. If you could tell students a little bit about what skills you use, and bonus points if you can relate any of the skills that you're using today to skills that you learned in middle school or high school. Could be something very school subject related, like a math skill or a science skill, or it could be something less subject related that you learned in middle school or high school, like working together with groups of people, communicating with others. It could be whatever you can think of. And I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot with this, but bonus points if you can relate it to something that you learned back in middle school or high school that you're still using today. So just to repeat, let us know what skills you're using in your job now, and bonus points if you can relate it to something you learned in middle school or high school. So I don't know, panelists, if you want to raise your hand, who wants to start? Otherwise, I'll call on one of you. I'm going to go to Sara.
I knew it, the outreach
Yep.
counselor.
Yeah.
So I actually use a lot of those skills in my work that I enjoyed working on in middle school, things like working on a team, communicating, learning how to use information that I was learning in class and talk about it, right? When I'm meeting with students, we talk a lot about different information, and my job is to make it interesting and palatable, like so you can feel it and really like it or gets your interest going. And also learning how to balance my love of doing creative things with the schoolwork that I had to still get done, right? So I have kind of like my day job that I do every day, but I also really have this other passion that is part of me and I really need to foster to feel whole. So I have to kind of also work on my time management skills around getting the job done during the day that I also enjoy, and giving myself some time outside of the workday to pursue personal passions.
Great, Sarah. Thank you for sharing that. I just want to point out too to the classrooms, to the students and teachers, you might see that Sarah has a yellow stripe on her background. That is because if you remember that Pathways to Promising Careers brochure, there was a section that was yellow, and that section is where a lot of education occupations, school counselors, social workers, things like that are. Those are occupations for people who like to work with other people. So that's the category that Sarah's position today fits into. So a lot of the other things she's done could fit into other categories, but that's the focus today. So it's interesting to hear the different skills she uses in her role. Okay, Django, you are up. Tell us a little bit about the skills you use today and if you can connect that to skills you learned in school.
Sure. Well, I'll say that currently, currently at my job, I just went through a new hire training, so I had to I was trained into a new role. Now I'm going to be on phone support, and I've just started where I'm answering phone calls the dealers call in, and I have to solve the issues ideally on the fly with them. Dealer.com helps. We help dealerships sell cars, and we don't sell the cars, but we build websites for them. So one thing that I immediately thought of is that I actually just to be completely real is I did suffer from anxiety a lot when I was in middle school, high school, and it's something that I'm having to overcome now. And it's I think it's really important to be able to speak up and be really clear with people. If people are telling you about an issue or something that you want to understand further, speaking up and asking and saying that you'd like to know, maybe more about that. One thing, and on another note, I was just talking with my mom yesterday, and she was talking to me because I was kind of talking through this new job and this new role, and she reminded me of how when I was in middle school and high school is when I really started improvising with music, and that actually is a skill that I learned that transfers to my job currently, where you might not know all the answers to how to solve something that someone's calling in about. They want to fix some widget on a website, and I don't know exactly where it is or how to fix it. But through improvisation, I feel like I can at least write down the issues, maybe figure out some ways to troubleshoot. What I'm trying to say is that, yeah, all the kind of different skills that we learn along the way do come into play. And that's all I got for a on-the-fly answer here for you.
Great, Django. I
Yeah.
really appreciate that and your candidness. And students, if you see that stripe alongside of Django's background, it's kind of that teal color. And that on the Pathways to Promising Careers are people who are organized and detail-oriented and work with lots of information. I think we heard a little bit of that from him too. But I think also other interests he has might fit into some of the other categories. Okay, so next up, Katie, can you share a little bit about skills that you're using now and relate any of those to skills you learned in school?
Yes, definitely. So I think, gosh, it's hard to pick. I'm going to limit myself to maybe two. But the first skill that comes to mind for me is, so I've always been an introvert, so I've always preferred, working by myself or working in a small group. And I was in school, I was really shy and had a hard time working on groups with other people. And that's definitely something that I have learned how to do a lot better, I think, as I've gotten older. But specifically for dentistry, I think that being an introvert has actually really helped me, because when I'm working with patients, it's that one-on-one setting. And I find that that's my favorite sort of social setting, when I can really just focus fully on one person in front of me. And, people don't usually like coming into the dentist. They're usually pretty nervous. And so a skill that I think is something that I love getting even better at, but I think is really important for anyone who's interested in going into dentistry, dental assisting, or dental hygiene, is being able to put people at ease or trying to help people get less nervous. So that's I think one of the parts of dentistry I enjoy the most. And another skill, and this is something that I've had to learn because I am not a natural artist, but there's a lot of art that goes into dentistry. We use a lot of different materials. We work really closely with our hands. making things on the scale of tenths of millimeters. And so I would say anybody who's an artist or really loves working with your hands, that I would definitely think about, if you could see yourself in dentistry. That's something that I always loved knitting. I always loved doing crafts. And so that part of working with my hands, I loved art class in middle school, and specifically sewing class. That was my favorite. So working with my hands was something that I had always enjoyed doing in school.
Thanks, Katie. I've heard a lot of people talk about their careers, and I don't think I ever would have thought about arts or crafts or knitting or sewing and relating that to dentistry. So I love that you shared that. It's kind of surprising to me. Students, Katie has that orange bar. That was the first category in the Pathways to Promising Careers brochure. It was, do you like to observe, learn, analyze, and solve problems? The medical occupations go into that category, but it was really interesting for me to hear Katie say one of the favorite aspects of her job is working with people, which is actually in the yellow category. So there's a little crossover. And then also working with our hands, that's a different category. So even though we can categorize occupations into different groups based on major significant traits of those occupations, there definitely can be crossover between categories. And Katie just really highlighted that really clearly for us. Thank you. All right, Brian, over to you. If you can tell us a little bit about the skills you're using now and you can relate those to skills you learned in school.
Well, I'd start off by saying that school is a struggle for me. I have learning disabilities that made that really difficult. So I was always hands-oriented kind of kid, did great with musical instruments, did great with art, but couldn't spell to save my life. And back then that was an actual thing. And grammar was not in my place. But I persevered and worked really hard at it. And I recognized when I was in middle school that I was going to have to work probably 2 to 3 times as hard on the hard subjects as I would on my easy subjects. So if anything, I think one of the things that I got out of middle school was really that perseverance, that determination to even though it's a hard thing to do, to really grab it and embrace working hard on it. So that would be the main kind of thing I picked up at that point in my life. But as far as other things, interpersonal skills, being able to communicate with other people, math was a huge part of what I do every day. And not just simple math, because sometimes when I'm working on complex lighting circuits and or controlling systems, it's algebra. It's like, I got this, I got that, but I don't know what the other answer is, fill in the blanks kind of stuff. So that would be that's how I would answer that question.
Great. Thank you so much. Boy, I remember being in middle school and wondering, when am I going to use this math, or how am I going to use it? So it's so great to hear an example of some class content that you learned that you use every day on your job. Okay, so, and the color on the side of Brian's background is that dark teal, and not surprisingly, that is the category that has occupations of people who like to work with their hands or with machines to make, fix, or build things. So that definitely is right where Brian's occupation fits in there. Okay, so we do have questions coming in the chat for panelists, and panelists are answering those. You can go ahead and continue asking those questions there. Panelists, if you're comfortable, you can answer them. If not, we'll try to bring them up towards the end. And if we have time in the Q&A, we can also read some of those questions. So for the recording, people watching it later can hear what those were, what those questions and answers are. We'll see what we have time for. Okay, so I'm going to go to kind of shifting gears here with another question. I am wondering, we talked about this a little when we first met, that a lot of people who are exploring careers and thinking about what they might want to do might have a question about, a lot of students and young people and people of all ages like to volunteer and make a difference. So sometimes it's neat to hear people who are working in jobs reflect on how what they're doing makes a difference in their community, in the world, to people. Some of you highlighted on that a little bit already, but I would love to have you share with students if you have any insight on how the work you do makes you feel like you make a difference in whatever way that might be. And if you have any insight on how the next generation, today's middle schoolers, when they are go through school and enter the workforce, how they might make a difference. You can answer either of those questions or both of them, whatever you feel comfortable with. I am going to start with Katie this time. I kind of saw you nodding as I was asking that question. So
Kathy,
Katie, you want to share with us?
Yeah, you read my mind. You're speaking my language. So the talking about like finding a job and a career that really fulfills you and gives you purpose, that is exactly, I feel really called to be in dentistry and to, do what I can to try to make the world a better place, one mouth at a time. And this is where I think definitely speaking to the next generation is huge, because so in my career as a dentist right now, every time I work with one patient, I'm working with one person. And I love getting people out of pain. I love watching people smile really big for the first time that they've ever felt confident to do that, after putting in a new filling or making a new pair of dentures. When people tell me they're able to eat things they haven't been able to eat in years, and their diabetes is getting better because of that, that makes me feel so good. And having people tell me that feedback, getting to see the same patients over again, I love that I'm getting to make those connections with people over time. But something that I think about a lot, and I think now public health is kind of having its moment with COVID, being in the news for so long. Every time I meet with one patient, I only see one person at a time. And what I'm really interested in, is kind of that bigger picture. I'm seeing people and I'm fixing cavities, but what if I could prevent more cavities from happening in more people so they didn't even have to come in and see me? And that's where I need this cohort of middle schoolers to really fix that problem for me. And hopefully within my career time, I'll get to see some of that too. But that is what really, really gets me going, is thinking about that big picture, preventing people from needing to come to the dentist. I think my ideal career outcome would be that I put myself out of a job and people never need to come and see me again.
That's a great way to look at your occupation. Thank you, Katie. Brian, are you up for sharing anything with us about how the work that you do makes a difference and how students will be able to make a difference in the future?
Sure. On some basic level, making sure that electrical systems are safe for people to live in and operate around. So like on an individual basis. For the community, my company provides the service of putting electricity in places that don't have it, or repairing and servicing those same things. And then on a bigger picture kind of thing, part of the new electric movement. So a number of years ago, I worked for Suncommon, was a lead electrician for them doing installations, did about 100 solar arrays. And then I moved on to working for them in their service department, repairing and restoring solar arrays back to running again. I'm not doing that kind of stuff currently, but I still maintain and hold that skill set and have lots of great conversations with people who are interested in solar and what that entails. And then in the theater technician thing, this venue I have in the nearby town, we didn't really have live music that was local. We had to go to Burlington for the most part to get something like that. And now we're providing musical entertainment for local. And it's I don't really get paid. I do a lot of volunteer there. So it's volunteering for the community.
Great, Brian. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love that insight. Okay, how about Sara next? If you want to share with us making a difference, and your chairlift example, I think, is really kicked it off for me when I was thinking about that with your career path.
Yeah, so like Katie, it's a big part of what I've found is really important to me, feeling fulfilled in my work. And that it did actually even exist when and I still actually do coach skiing, but with that skiing, right, you're kind of helping people learn this really fun thing that they can use hopefully forever. When I was a therapist, it was kind of my philosophy around therapy is that, a lot of people, most people, I would even say everyone comes up against kind of challenges, and those challenges aren't a deficit. In my opinion, there's something that really grow us as humans and individuals. And going to see a therapist is one way that you can kind of build those strengths out of a challenge. And with my current work, I think the potential for impact in this role, kind of meeting with students and letting them know all of the opportunities that are out there, and hopefully helping them to feel that those are opportunities that are accessible to them, helping them kind of figure out a dream that they have currently and create a plan to get there. That feels really like it could really create a pretty awesome impact. And at the heart of it, though, is kind of the students, right? So it is all of you who are in this meeting today. It's you, allowing yourselves to dream about so many different possibilities, and grabbing a little bit of faith that with a good plan, you can get there. So I think for this generation, you're already really making a big impact. I hope that you'll continue to kind of vocalize your thoughts and opinions, because hopefully as we're older generations, we're listening to that more now, and we're really taking your input and your perspectives to heart. So I guess I hope that answered the question.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Sara. It was really heartfelt. This is great. Okay, Django, you're up for making a difference.
Up for making a difference. Yes, I
Yep.
am. So in my my day-to-day, I have different dealerships calling in. We have, there's 12,000 websites that we manage. So that's a lot of different people that are calling in, but they're all local businesses, the majority of these dealerships. So that's one piece, is that just people are calling in with issues, and we help them with getting their site ready so they can, they can sell their cars and make money, which is important to keep their businesses afloat. And then definitely want to touch on dealer.com is we're really passionate about giving back to our community, and we are, I believe we get 16 hours of paid time off. So we get paid to volunteer in our community. And it's a really great thing. We also, one of the things, so we can volunteer at different organizations, the Howard Center, I think we can do different food shelves. And we also, Green Up Day is a big one. We get to take an hour off of our day to go clean up trash around our neighborhood, which is important. And I will say, I work in the tech industry, and it's a constantly changing thing. And I think that I first kind of learned about computers in school, and I think that the youth I probably could figure out what I'm doing in a very short amount of time, are really quick to pick up things as far as technology. And we'll be looking to you for solutions and how to progress our companies in the future. So, without a doubt, we'll be looking to you for some answers as far as tech goes.
Great, definitely. I love ending on that note for this question. Thanks, Django. Okay, so we are getting close to the end of me asking you questions. So we're going to open it up to Q&A in a couple minutes, but I wanted to ask you each one. We had a long list of questions. I know we wouldn't be able to get through them all, but I have kind of one final question I want to ask each of you. But you won't have a lot of time to spend on it. So this will be a little shorter for your answers, so we can open it up to some of the questions that students and teachers have. But if you could just each reflect on, some of you might have mentioned this a little already, but just to summarize, to reflect for us your favorite aspect of your career. Even if you already talked about it, just mention it again. And maybe if you can also say like what you discovered about yourself through that, like why is that your favorite? I'm just curious if you can share with us that. We are going to start with Brian this time. So if you can let us, sorry, I know, big question here, which is your favorite thing, and maybe don't worry, it doesn't have to be well thought out favorite, just what you're feeling right now as you're talking to middle school students.
It's not going to be well thought out for sure.
Okay, that's fine.
What aspect do I, in my current situation, it's more about the freedom I have of making my own schedule and doing my own work, because I'm working strictly for myself. When you work for somebody else, you have to do what that person says when you're working for somebody else. And I still have to do that because I've got clients now. So instead of having a boss, I have lots of bosses. So it's that right now it's the ability to kind of, pick and choose and prioritize the work I want to do. But over the arc of my career, it's been that my interests have always led me to good work. Music led me to theater technician. Construction trades as a child led me into construction trades as an adult. I often joke with my friends that I've been doing the same thing for the past 35 years. I just have gotten better at it.
Great. I love that. Thanks. And great job on the spot with that. I really, really like how you reflected on that. And I also saw, I'm watching in gallery view right now, I saw all these nodding heads when you mentioned flexibility. So I think others are relating to that aspect of your work. Okay. So Django, back at you. How about your favorite aspect of your work?
All right. My favorite aspect of my work. I think as far as because I am a musician as well, and I like kind of relating those two things and kind of seeing where there's overlap. And also one thing that I've been trying to do recently is just notice what things make me excited. And in the moment, I'm like, oh, this thing really makes me feel great, and it's something that feels fulfilling. For music, that is when I'm playing in front of people and I might not know a song, and the band that I have some friends, I play in a band called the Larkspurs, and we love to try a song that we might not know. I might not know all the words, but I'm embracing the unknown and trying something new. And I feel like there's a lot of growth there. And in that moment, whether or not it goes well, it does not always go well, but we have a lot of fun. And I think that, embracing the unknown it's been a big piece of my career. I will say I got hired at dealer.com. I got hired February of 2020, and they said I would start April 6th, 2020. And so I had, and then the pandemic happened during that month of March. So I had to learn how to adapt in that situation, embrace the unknown, and just work from home, try to get trained. They'd never trained anyone there before during a pandemic, or just never done had a remote employee. So I'd say that, that's basically one of my favorite things, is just trying something new and not being afraid of that, just trying to enjoy maybe being anxious about it.
Great, Django. Thanks so much for sharing. That's inspiring. And yes, now is a good time to be able to embrace the unknown for sure. Katie, how about you? Favorite aspect of your work? I know you mentioned it a little bit in your intro, but tell us tell us more about that.
Again, it's hard to pick just one, but I'll talk about something I haven't really talked about yet that I really love about my job, which is that I never feel bored. There's so much variety in what I do every day. I have a pretty short attention span, and so, physically moving around, going to different rooms, talking with different people, doing different types of procedures. That's why I like being a general dentist, is I kind of get to do a little bit of everything. And so I love the variety, and I love that I never feel bored. And with that too, even though I'm finishing up my training now, it's kind of a continuous learning process forever, which I think in all the careers that we've talked about today, you have to kind of keep learning forever, which Brian talked about a little bit, which I really liked. And I like that. I like learning new things. I like choosing what I want to learn too, and having a little more agency in that. And, what am I interested in that I want to learn more about? And then taking more classes about that, learning about different types of materials and science and procedures, and, traveling places to learn about those things. All of that is really exciting to me. So I think the variety and like the day-to-day not feeling bored and feeling excited is something that I really like. I look forward to going into work in the mornings and sometimes not knowing what's going to happen, and that's exciting.
Oh, wow. Great, Katie. And good job coming up with something you didn't already talk about on the spot, because I know you had said earlier, one of the favorite aspects of your work. So thank you so much. Sara, we'll wrap up this question with you. And then, so tell us about your favorite aspect of your job.
I love working with students. I really enjoy it. I like working with people, and meeting with students is, for me, really enjoyable. Just kind of hearing your perspectives and, engaging in different conversations. I really like it. I also really like the flexibility of my current job. With where I am in life, it's really helpful to be able to pick my kids up after school. I really like having the flexibility to be able to do that, or see a soccer game. And I really like not being on call all the time, and having also the flexibility to engage in some of the art that I really also enjoy. So I think those two things are a pretty great match for me at this point in my life.
Great. Thank you so much, Sara. And how nice to end favorite aspects and hear you talk so much about students who are in our audience. So we have a few minutes left to field some of the questions that might be coming from classrooms, from students. Teachers, if you want to type any additional questions into the chat, you can. And then in about 5 minutes, we're going to flip it over and we're going to ask you students some questions. So if there's a question that any students have or a teacher has and you want to type it in the chat, you can, and we'll ask. And while we're giving you a moment to do that, we can also take a look here in the chat of questions that already came up that the panelists have already answered. So one question here for Django was, is your work remote or office-based? How does that work for you? And Django said, I work from home. We will have flexibility going back to the office. We have such an awesome team. I work in support and feel very supported. Also, my dog loves having me home. So that was the answer to that. And reading these out loud so everyone can hear them, because I know you can't all see the chat, but also for the recording, so people watching it later can see that. So we have a new question that's just coming in for Brian. I don't know if you see that, Brian. If you want to unmute your mic, what are your challenges with being an electrician?
Lately, it's been supply chain, getting materials. Challenges for being an electrician. To becoming an electrician or being an electrician. I guess being an electrician, it's really not difficult. Once you've got skilled and trained, it's pretty straightforward stuff. Becoming an electrician was probably the biggest challenge for me, was workplace interactions, working with people that didn't necessarily see eye to eye with me, and having to agree to disagree. Construction trades can be a little difficult in that way.
Great. Thank you so much, Brian. So we have another question here. Okay, now we have questions flying in. All right. So here's a question. Is not going to college a bad thing? Does not going to college affect your life? If college isn't what I want to do, but I want to be successful, what should I do? So I'm going to see if there's one panelist who'd be willing to answer that, because we have a lot of other questions coming in. So we'll just give one. Does anyone feel like they could answer that question? Brian, we'll go back to you for that.
Yeah, so I do have a degree, but it's in music. It's not in electrical. It did require me to go to a 4-year technical school to get the education necessary to do the job. But it is absolutely not necessary to have a college education to be an electrician.
Great. Thanks so much, Brian.
Just add one thing.
Sara.
I think also the only way it could be, you can always decide to go to college later. The only time that maybe it would negatively affect you would be if you wanted to pursue a job that you needed to have a college degree and you didn't have it yet. But again, you could make that decision at the time to engage in education.
Great. Thanks, Sara, for adding that. We have so many questions coming in, and this is awesome. I know some people need to leave at 11. We also have a wrap up that we need to do. So I'm just going to say that any questions that are coming in that we can't answer now live, we will try to get answers from panelists and share it with all of the teachers. I know VSAC made a commitment to doing that, and the panelists said they'd be willing to help us do that too, so that we can share those answers with teachers who can then share them with their students. So we will work on that. I am going to just maybe do one more question and then we'll flip it around, but I know some classes need to log out now. This is a good question because we really didn't touch on this at all, but do any of you have any regrets about what the career path you took? Or maybe a part of it. Does anyone want to answer that? I'm seeing no from Brian. So I don't know if anyone wants to answer that. Sara, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Sara.
No, you go, Katie.
I'll go quickly and then I'll pass the baton to you. So I don't know that I have any regrets, but maybe thinking about, how I would do things differently now if I were to go back and kind of start from the beginning. So I did have a pretty linear path. I kind of knew that I wanted to be a dentist. I knew I wanted to be in the medical field and then be a dentist. And so I took a pretty straight path to get where I am now. And I think if I were to go back either to high school or to college, I think I would spend a little more time kind of trying out different things just to confirm it to myself. I'm pretty happy where I am now, but I was lucky enough to live out in Montana for a summer in dental school. So maybe a little bit like Sara's time out west, and just try living in a new, different place. I'd never lived outside of New England before. And I was lucky that I had that opportunity over a summer in dental school, even though I ended up working in a dental office, which I kind of stumbled into. I was planning on, trying something new and learning to bake, working in a bakery. I think if I were to do it again, I think I would just kind of explore a bigger variety and kind of take my time weaving around a little bit more.
Great. Thanks, Katie. Sara, did you want to add?
Yeah, for me, I knew that I really wanted to work with people, and being kind of, when I worked initially at a community mental health organization, I also knew that I like to change, that I'm someone who doesn't necessarily like to be stagnant all the time, and getting my master's in social work really allowed me to have flexibility with how I used that degree. So it definitely is not a regret of mine, but knowing that about myself, that I need, or that I wanted to kind of have flexibility to pivot, really kind of pushed me towards that specific degree.
Great, thanks, Sarah. So the list of questions that came into the chat is fantastic. So we are going to work at sharing those with the panelists and seeing who might want to answer some of them. Some panelists have answered questions right in the chat, so you can go through and look at that. Teachers, if you submitted a question, check to see if the answer is there. If not, we will work with VSAC on collecting some of the answers and getting them out to everybody as follow-up for today's panel. But right now, we're going to do a couple things for wrap up before we close Vermont Career Connect for today. So for the classrooms that are still here, it looks like lots of you still are. We're going to turn it around and ask you a question. So teachers, if you can help us with this by asking students in your classroom today, listening to these panelists, can you give an example of something that surprised you? I know I was surprised a couple of times, but if you can think of something that surprised you, like you weren't expecting hearing from one of the panelists or about their career paths, whatever it might be, if you can relay that question to your teacher and they can type it into the chat, we'd love to share some of those. So we'll give a couple of minutes for that. So, and did anything surprise you? Was there something that you just weren't expecting to hear today? I don't know what exactly your expectations were, what you thought you might hear, but I hope that today's panelists had some information for you, maybe that you weren't necessarily expecting or you didn't already know. So if you have a chance, share that with your teacher and your teacher can type that into the chat. It does look like we have some students who are actually at computers. You can type that in yourself too. And I will also open this up actually to adults who aren't with a classroom. If you were listening in today and something surprised you from the panelists, go ahead and type that in there and we can share that too. Okay, so we have one example here that just came in. We thought it was surprising that a dentist found art class helpful. That definitely surprised me. And I study people's career paths. So great job, Katie, for surprising all of us. Okay, here's another one. We were surprised to learn that you don't have to go to college for some jobs. Absolutely true. And that Pathways to Promising Careers resource, if you share that with students and look through that, and there's also a link in it where you can go look at the labor market information for all 500 occupations in Vermont, you can see that there are many that don't require college, all different kinds of training and education. Okay, so we have more flowing in. Thank you so much. So we have, you're surprised that social skills they learned in middle school is helpful in their career. Absolutely, great. Surprised that you could be in a band and then move to a car website job. Django, surprising people there with that career path. And you can still be in a band, right? Even while you're in that website job.
The dream of being a rock star never goes away, just so everyone knows. And
yeah, okay.
It's still time. Yeah, still time.
Yeah.
Or a jazz legend.
Okay, so all right, so you can go ahead and keep typing those in if you have those, and more questions are coming in too. So you can go ahead, panelists, if you want to answer those there. Otherwise, we can do that after. So before we close today's session, I just wanted to talk about what ways middle school students can continue exploring their own interests and career fields. There are all different ways. I'm just going to share a couple. And actually, teachers, if you know of more ways, or students, if there are things you've done or want to do, you can go ahead and have your teacher type that in the chat. But the three things I have to share with you today about continuing to explore your own interests and career fields that you might be interested in is that two of them are talking to people. One is talking to people in your school. Talk to your teachers. They know a lot about different occupations that might use subjects that they teach, or you can ask them about their career path. School counselors in middle schools have a lot of great career resources, so check in with your counseling office. Find out what the resources are right in your school. Ask different people who work in your school. And another thing you can do is talk to other people in your personal lives. You can ask your parents, you can ask friends, you can ask parents of your friends. You could ask neighbors. A fun question to ask adults in your life is you can ask them what their favorite job was and what their least favorite job was and why. And sometimes you'll find out that you might ask two different people and find out that one person's favorite job was somebody else's least favorite job. So it can be really interesting to find out why, and that can help you kind of reflect on what your interests are and what jobs you might like or not like. And sometimes people might pursue a job they think they'll like, and then they find out they don't like it. So that can be really fun to find out. And then you can also, on your own, you can search online. You can go check out this Promising Pathways brochure. You can click on the links there. You can look at Vermont labor market information. You can look at national labor market information. You can do all sorts of searches, like what does it take to become a fill in the blank. You can find about education, training, experience needed, or what is it like to be a. You might find career videos, other things, and also Anna just put in the chat the link to the Vermont Career Connect website. There are over 100 videos of occupations, many people in Vermont, but there are also people all over the country. I have watched all of them. They are amazing. You can learn all about what other people are doing. So definitely check online. Starting with VSAC's Vermont Career Connect website is a great way to do that. So I want to give a huge thank you to VSAC for hosting us today and all of your expert event planning to get 500 students here with us today, and to the panelists. You were all so kind and generous with your time to prepare for this and to be here today and to share your winding, twisty, wavy career paths and putting you on the spot in front of middle school students, asking you questions. You all did a fantastic job. So thank you for your time. So thank you, everyone. Students, you can watch this recording after. You can share it with your friends, with your family. Thanks for being here.